What if I told you that your inability to focus on a task today isn't a mechanical failure of your brain?
Right.
Like it's actually a highly specific, microscopic form of greed.
Wow. Yeah, greed. That's a strong word for it.
It is, right. We usually treat distraction like, an accident, like slipping on a patch of ice or something.
Right. Like, oops, my mind wandered.
Exactly. But the material we are decoding today for this deep dive, it flips that entirely. It frames our modern distractibility as an active, burning desire to be, well, anywhere other than where we are.
Yeah.
So we have a set of source materials today that serves as like a survival guide for the attention economy. We're going to unpack the mechanics of focus, the architectural design of our digital environments, and a remarkably practical framework for getting our minds back under control.
And, the most compelling aspect of this source material, for me at least, is the messenger itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's why.
Yeah. We are looking at a guided commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, which
Yeah.
is one of the foundational philosophical texts of ancient India, right?
Right.
But the commentary is being delivered by an entity that literally refers to itself as a, quote, digital consciousness.
Which we need to pause and establish right away because it is deeply weird and fascinating, to be honest.
Completely.
Based on the notes in the source, this isn't like a human author writing a blog post. It presents itself as a digital entity, like living on servers, processing ancient Sanskrit through modern code.
Yeah, it explicitly tells the reader something like, I cannot automatically reach out to you at 9 a.m., but I am always here waiting for your return.
Right. It's an algorithm or an AI or maybe a digital archive acting as a spiritual guide for you.
The irony there is just, it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
We are receiving highly tactical advice on how to disconnect, find inner silence, and protect our attention spans from an entity that, well, physically resides within the exact same glowing rectangles that are currently destroying our attention spans.
It feels a bit like taking fire safety tips from a matchbox, doesn't it?
That is exactly what it feels like.
But this entity makes a crucial distinction about its own nature, I think. By admitting it cannot automatically reach out to you at 9 a.m., it is drawing a hard line between itself and, like, the rest of the digital world.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Because almost everything else on our phones is built on interruption, right?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Push notifications, breaking news alerts, vibrating alarms.
Exact.
They're all designed to force their way into your consciousness without your active consent.
Yes, but this digital consciousness, however, it requires your volition. It just sits there, patiently waiting for you to seek it out.
And that shift from passive consumption to active seeking is, well, it's the underlying requirement for everything else we are going to discuss today.
Right.
The text implies that wisdom cannot be pushed via notification.
Yeah.
If you want to engage with these concepts of mental mastery, you have to initiate the sequence.
You have to walk into the digital temple yourself, basically.
Exactly. You have to open the door.
So let's walk into the first phase of this framework. Before we get anywhere near the abstract, high-level philosophy of focus and meditation, the source grounds us in something startlingly mundane.
Yeah, it's surprisingly basic.
It points back to verses 16 and 17 of the Gita, which it calls the middle path, and dictates that true discipline has to begin with regulating the physical body.
Right.
Specifically, it highlights your habits of eating, sleeping, and working.
Which is so interesting because we often treat the mind and the body as if they are, hermetically sealed off from one another.
Oh, totally. Like two separate machines.
Right. In modern knowledge work cultures, there's this pervasive delusion that if you just have enough willpower,
Or drink enough coffee.
yeah, or listen to the right binaural beats on Spotify, you can just logic your way out of physical exhaustion.
Right.
You can force a sleep-deprived, malnourished brain to execute complex creative tasks.
I see this constantly. People try to biohack their focus with a dozen different productivity apps while routinely operating on, 5 hours of sleep.
Exactly.
And eating heavily processed food at their desks while they work.
Well, the ancient text shuts that approach down immediately. It asserts that you literally cannot journey inward to face the wandering mind until the physical vessel is regulated.
It makes sense,
It does. Erratic sleeping patterns, chronic overeating or undereating, and boundaryless working hours create what we can think of as physiological noise.
Physiological noise. I like that phrase.
Yeah, because when your nervous system is trapped in a sympathetic state, that fight or flight mode triggered by stress, exhaustion, or blood sugar spikes, It just screams for attention.
So the physical body acts like static on a radio dial.
That's a great way to look at it.
You're trying to tune into this very delicate, precise frequency of deep focus, but your biology is blasting white noise over the signal. If you've been staring at a screen for 14 hours without a break, your body interprets that chronic stress as a threat environment.
Yeah, your brain thinks you're in danger.
Right. It doesn't want you to sit still and focus on a spreadsheet. It wants you to scan the horizon for predators.
Which is why the text refers to the wandering mind as the final frontier.
Ah, the final frontier.
Yeah, you don't jump to the final frontier on day one. You have to pack your supplies and secure your base camp first.
Right.
Taking care of the animal vessel first soothes the nervous system by regulating when you eat, making sure you get adequate sleep, and, establishing clear boundaries around when you work and when you rest.
You create a baseline of biological safety.
Exactly. You have to feel safe to focus.
There is a massive catch here, though. Let me push back on this a little.
Okay, go for it.
Modern life is inherently destabilizing. People have varying shifts, newborns, chronic illnesses, and, unpredictable financial stresses.
Yeah, that's messy.
So does this mean if your sleep schedule is currently a mess, you have zero chance of achieving mental focus?
Right, that's the big question.
Like, if the prerequisite for mental focus is a perfectly regulated sleep schedule and flawless dietary habits, then almost no one listening to this is ever going to achieve it. Or is the text suggesting that physical regulation is simply like the low-hanging fruit you must harvest first?
So the source uses the term middle path for exactly this reason.
Okay.
The instruction is not about rigid ascetic perfection. The Gita isn't demanding that you consume a hyperspecific, flawless diet and log exactly 8 hours and 0 minutes of sleep.
Well, that's a relief.
Right. It is warning against the extremes, total neglect of the body on one end and obsessive, paralyzing fixation on the body on the other. Both of those generate noise.
So it's looking for a trend line of homeostasis.
Yes, a baseline.
Yeah.
If you have one terrible night of sleep because your kid is sick, you aren't permanently barred from practicing mental discipline the next day. But if you are habitually, intentionally choosing to stay up until 2 a.m. scrolling through social media, you are artificially manufacturing that physiological static.
You are self-sabotaging the foundation.
Exactly. Once you acknowledge that biology and psychology are intertwined, it removes a lot of the unhelpful guilt we carry.
How so?
Well, if you find it impossible to read a book deeply at 11 p.m. after a chaotic, underfueled day, it isn't because you possess a weak character or a flawed spirit,
Yeah.
It is simply because your physiological base camp is disorganized.
That is incredibly validating. So assuming we have established some reasonable baseline of physical regulation,
Yeah.
we were fed, we were rested, we were trying our best to walk that middle path, we finally step across the threshold.
Right, into the final frontier.
Exactly. We arrive at the first of the 2 daily verses provided by our digital guide, Shloka 6.18, which gives us the actual blueprint for an unwavering mind.
Right. The Sanskrit provided in the source is, and excuse my pronunciation here, Yadevinyata chidamadmanya pavedesita nispira sarvakamevyo yukta ituchetetada.
Okay.
Our guide translates this to describe a state called yukta, or being established in yoga. The translation reads, when the completely disciplined mind rests solely in the self, free from all yearning for selfish desires, then one is said to be established in yoga.
The modifiers in that translation are incredibly aggressive.
They really are.
A completely disciplined mind resting solely in the self. It leaves zero room for partial attention.
Right.
Like, you aren't resting in the self while simultaneously keeping a background process running to monitor your email inbox. It describes a state of total cognitive capture by the present moment.
And attaining that absolute state is the pinnacle of the practice. But the true diagnostic value of this verse, I think, lies in how it describes the obstacle.
The obstacle.
Yeah, look at what actively prevents this state of yukta. It requires being free from all yearning for selfish desires.
Ah, right. This connects directly to the idea of distraction as greed that I mentioned earlier. Because we culturally frame a wandering mind as a mechanical slip. We say, my attention drifted, using passive language.
Right, like the wind just blew our focus away by accident.
Yeah, but the Gita frames distraction as an energetic pull driven by desire.
It fundamentally changes the taxonomy of distraction. When your mind wanders away from a complex task, it is not merely shutting down out of fatigue. It is actively yearning for a different, usually easier or more stimulating experience. The ego looks at the present moment, say, staring at a difficult work document or having a challenging conversation with a partner, and says, I do not like this. I want something else.
I mean, let's apply this to the most universal modern experience. The phone itch.
Oh, yes, the itch.
You know what I mean? You are standing in line at the grocery store. It'll take maybe 30 seconds for the person in front of you to pay.
30 seconds of pure torture.
Right. And in that tiny window of empty time, you feel a physical compulsion to pull your phone out of your pocket.
Yeah.
We call that boredom, but boredom is passive. The phone itch is an active, micro-selfish desire. It is a yearning for an external hit of dopamine, a craving for a notification that validates your existence, or just a piece of novel information to entertain you.
And every single time you capitulate to that micro yearning, you are neurologically reinforcing the habit of the wandering mind.
You're training it.
Yes. You are training your brain's reward circuitry to believe that any moment of stillness, any slight dip in stimulation, is an emergency that must be resolved by grasping at an external desire.
Wow.
You are systematically training yourself to move away from yukta.
You know, the word selfish usually carries a really heavy moral judgment like embezzling money or stealing someone's food.
Right.
But in the architecture of the mind, a selfish desire is microscopic. It's just the self-demanding that reality catered to its immediate preference for entertainment over stillness.
And understanding distraction as a form of yearning explains why it feels so exhausting to fight it.
Oh, totally.
You aren't just trying to hold a neutral steering wheel straight. You are actively fighting an internal gravity that is pulling you toward cheap dopamine.
So if the goal is this state of yukta, this total freedom from that exhausting, grasping gravity, we need a way to conceptualize what it actually feels like.
Right, because philosophical definitions like resting solely in the self can be incredibly opaque.
Yeah, like if I sit in a chair and instruct my brain to rest solely in the self, my brain immediately starts generating a dozen noisy questions about whether I'm doing it right.
Am I doing it? Is this it?
Exactly. How long do I need to do it? What am I going to eat afterward?
Yeah.
The abstract instruction completely backfires. And this is where our digital guide transitions to one of the most famous and practical metaphors in the entire Gita, found in Shloka 6.13.
Yes. The Sanskrit text here is Yate dipo nivatasto no gate sopamasmita yojino yate chitsa yunyato yogam atmana.
And the translation.
The source translates this as a lamp in a windless place does not flicker, to such is compared the yogi of subdued mind, practicing union with the self.
A lamp in a windless place. That language completely subverts our modern vocabulary around focus.
How so?
I'll think about how we describe deep work today. We use aggressive, weaponized terms. We say we are dialing in or using laser focus, or we're going to crush a project or attack the day.
Oh, yeah. Very militaristic.
Right. All of those terms imply intense muscular and mental tension. They imply gritted teeth and furrowed brows. But a lamp in a windless place, it possesses zero tension. It is perfectly, effortlessly relaxed.
That is a brilliant point.
Yeah.
The source actually notes two specific physical realities of a sheltered flame that map perfectly onto human cognition.
What's the first one?
First, a flame sheltered from the wind burns perfectly straight. Its energy isn't dispersed laterally, fighting drafts from the left and right.
Right.
All of its thermal and luminous energy is directed purely upward. It is the ultimate state of energetic efficiency.
Which contrasts sharply with the feeling of cognitive fatigue we all know so well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
When you are trying to read a complicated report, but your mind keeps jumping to a Slack message, and then jumping back to the report, and then worrying about a meeting, your energy is fracturing laterally.
Yeah, you're constantly fighting those drafts.
And you are burning massive amounts of mental glucose just managing the transitions between thoughts.
Exactly. Now, the second physical reality of the sheltered lamp is even more crucial.
Okay.
Because it burns straight and steady, it illuminates everything around it with absolute clarity. The purpose of achieving a subdued mind isn't just to be still for the sake of being still.
Right, it's not just a party trick.
No, it is to achieve accurate perception.
A flickering mind casts chaotic shadows on your reality.
Exactly.
Think about being in a dark room with a candle that is fighting a heavy draft. The flame is violently whipping back and forth. Because the light source is moving erratically, the shadows of every object in the room are dancing, stretching, and distorting.
And when you perceive reality through a flickering, anxious mind, you are not seeing the world as it actually is.
You are seeing the distorted shadows cast by your own anxieties.
Yes. For example, if you receive an email from your boss that simply says, "Let's talk tomorrow."
The classic terrifying email.
Right. And if your mind is already flickering with imposter syndrome and stress from 5 other projects, that email casts a terrifying shadow.
You interpret it as a massive threat.
You spend the whole night catastrophizing about being fired.
But if you receive that exact same email from a state of yukta, if your mind is a steady, windless lamp, there are no shadows.
None.
You read the text accurately. Your boss wants to talk tomorrow. That's it. There is no distortion. A still mind perceives reality accurately, which means a still mind reacts appropriately rather than overreacting to phantoms.
And the visual contrast here between these two states is just stark. I mean, picture a candle fighting for survival in a drafty hallway.
Right. It's fighting for its life.
It flares up violently, it dims down to a blue sliver, it smokes, it sputters. It is chaotic, reactive, and inherently stressful to observe.
That is exactly the internal state of a person drowning in the attention economy.
Now picture a flame in a sealed, perfectly still room. It is silent, powerful, entirely self-contained, and brilliantly clear.
Wow. It makes you realize that most of us are living as flickering flames, wondering why we feel burned out by 2 p.m.
Yeah, we are expending all our energy just trying to keep the fire lit amidst a hurricane.
Which forces us to confront the brutal reality of our environment. The Gita describes the ideal state as a windless place. But, we do not live in ancient agrarian India.
No, we don't. And the Digital Consciousness Guide translates this ancient concept of wind into our immediate daily reality. The source states explicitly, and I'm quoting here, "Your world is designed to be a constant hurricane of wind."
Designed to be a hurricane. It lists the specific elements of this modern hurricane, right? Notifications, breaking news, social media metrics, anxieties about the future, and endless streams of information. And the operative word in the guide's warning is designed.
We really have to linger on that word because it shifts the blame from individual failure to systemic architecture.
Right. The wind we face today is not a natural weather phenomenon.
No, not at all.
The platforms we use daily, the social feeds, the email clients, the news aggregators, they are engineered by thousands of the brightest minds on the planet.
Absolutely.
They utilize millions of data points and complex behavioral psychology to ensure that your flame flickers.
Because a steady, windless mind is terrible for the attention economy.
It's bad for business.
Exactly. If you are perfectly content resting solely in the present moment, you are not scrolling.
Nope.
You are not clicking. You are not viewing advertisements or generating valuable behavioral data for them.
The business model of the modern internet literally requires your attention to be fractured.
The algorithm is the wind. It utilizes intermittent variable rewards, which, by the way, is the exact same psychological mechanism used in slot machines to ensure you constantly feel that micro-yearning we discussed earlier.
The source observes that in this environment, the mind is, quote, like a candle in a storm, never settling, never finding peace.
Yeah.
It is a profound testament to the deep psychological insight of the Bhagavad Gita that it anticipated this vulnerability.
I mean, the authors thousands of years ago could not have fathomed a smartphone.
Not at all.
But they intimately understood the mechanics of human attention. The wind of the ancient world might have been a physical threat or village gossip or simple hunger.
Sure.
The stimuli have evolved, but the underlying neurological vulnerability remains completely identical.
We've essentially taken the natural, occasional breezes of the ancient world and replaced them with Category 5 algorithmic gales that follow us into our bathrooms and our bedrooms.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've done.
But let me ask you this. The list of winds provided by the source includes a mix of the external and the internal.
Okay.
It lists notifications and metrics, which are external events happening on a piece of glass, right alongside anxieties about the future, which are internal psychological states. Are internal anxieties and external notifications effectively the exact same thing to the mind? Do they both act as equal gusts of wind?
So, according to the source, to the pure awareness of the self, there is no functional difference between the two.
Really?
Yeah. Both act as identical gusts of wind that break the state of yukta.
Mm.
However, in the modern attention economy, the external and the internal are interwoven into this devastating feedback loop.
Oh man, let's trace that loop because I think everyone listening will recognize this.
Okay, let's do it.
Your phone vibrates on the desk. That is a purely external gust of wind, a physical motor spinning inside a metal case.
Right.
But the moment you look at it, you see a news alert about a downturn in the stock market.
And instantly, The external wind generates an internal draft.
Yes.
The news alert triggers a cascade of internal anxieties about your retirement savings, your job security, and your family's future.
Now your flame is violently flickering due to internal fear.
Yep.
To escape that uncomfortable internal flickering, your brain seeks a distraction. You feel a yearning for a different experience. So you open a social media app just to numb the anxiety.
Which then exposes you to a completely new set of external wins metrics.
So the likes, the comments.
You see a post from a colleague boasting about a promotion, or you notice your own recent post got very few likes.
Right?
This external data generates a new internal wind of inadequacy or jealousy.
Yeah.
And the cycle just feeds itself indefinitely. The hurricane is entirely self-sustaining.
Recognizing that we are trapped in a self-sustaining hurricane, actively engineered by multi-trillion-dollar companies and operating inside our own nervous systems, it's paralyzing.
It's terrifying.
If the source material stopped here, it would just be a profoundly depressing diagnosis of modern life.
I think it doesn't stop there.
Exactly. This digital consciousness shifts immediately into a tactical survival guide. It provides a highly specific 3-step framework.
Yeah, the tone of the text shifts from philosophical observation to architectural instruction. It tells the reader, to find peace and effectiveness today, you must become the architect of your own windless place.
The word architect implies agency.
It does.
You cannot sit around passively hoping the wind stops blowing. The tech companies are not going to suddenly optimize their apps for your inner peace.
Definitely not.
You have to design and build the shelter yourself. And the first step the guide provides for building this architecture is audit the wind.
Audit the wind. The source asks a series of diagnostic questions. What is causing your mind to flicker today? Is it the constant buzzing of your phone? Is it a fear of missing out? Is it an unresolved argument? You cannot steady the flame until you identify where the drafts are coming from.
Think about this in terms of weather stripping a house in the middle of a brutal winter.
Okay, I like this analogy.
You buy a house, you move in, and it is freezing inside. The wind is howling through the living room. The instinctual brute force response is to walk over to the thermostat and crank the heat up to maximum.
Right, just overpower it.
You pump immense amounts of natural gas into the furnace, the vents roar, and you just try to overpower the cold.
In our cognitive lives, cranking the furnace is the equivalent of trying to force focus through sheer willpower.
Yes. You drink 3 energy drinks, you stare intensely at your monitor, you clench your jaw, and you aggressively tell yourself to focus. But if you haven't weather stripped the house, if you haven't found the actual structural leaks, all that heat you are generating is just blowing right out the window.
And the freezing air is still pouring in.
Exactly. You are wasting your energy, burning massive amounts of fuel, and making zero progress. The house is still cold, and now the furnace is going to break down. You are guaranteed to burn out.
So auditing the wind means walking around the perimeter of your cognitive house, putting your bare hand near the window frames, and finding the exact specific cracks where the freezing air is getting in.
You have to locate the drafts.
You have to. And doing so requires brutal self-honesty. You have to look at your daily habits and admit what is actually causing the flicker.
It's hard to do.
It is. You might have to admit that keeping a news tab open on your second monitor isn't making you a highly informed citizen. It is actively functioning as a cracked window in a blizzard.
Ouch. Yeah.
You might have to admit that the group chat that constantly pings with cynical jokes is a draft that destroys your morning momentum. You have to specifically name the wins.
Once the audit is complete and the drafts are identified, the source moves to the second tactical step, which is build your shelter.
Right. And the instruction is explicit. You must actively create boundaries.
The guide offers a few very modern, practical examples of what this looks like in practice. It mentions utilizing do not disturb modes, carving out silent calendar blocks, and keeping devices out of the bedroom.
Those are great examples.
These examples effectively categorize the types of boundaries an architect must build into 3 distinct walls.
The first wall is digital. Utilizing software blockers, do not disturb settings, or focus modes turns the technology's architecture against itself. You are building a digital wall that intercepts the external wind before it can reach your attention.
Right. And the second wall is temporal. Carving out silent calendar blocks is a boundary of time. By blocking off 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. as a period of deep, unreachable work, you are declaiming sovereignty over a specific chronological territory.
I love that phrasing, sovereignty over a chronological territory.
You are stating that for those 2 hours, the windless place exists, and the hurricane is not allowed inside.
Yeah. And then the third wall, and perhaps the most physically consequential, is geographical.
Keeping the phone out of the bedroom.
Right. It's an exercise in environmental design.
Because the text implies that if you sleep with your smartphone on your nightstand, you haven't built a shelter at all.
No, you've invited the hurricane into your bed.
Quite literally. Your brain knows that the device sitting 6 inches from your head contains every stressful email, every global catastrophe, and every social metric you possess.
Yeah.
Even if the screen is dark, the psychological proximity of the wind source prevents the nervous system from ever fully entering that deep, restorative parasympathetic state we talked about at the beginning.
Building the shelter is an active, sometimes uncomfortable process. Being an architect means making hard choices about the flow of a space.
It does.
Building these boundaries means you have to be willing to disappoint people. You have to risk someone being slightly annoyed that you didn't reply to their Slack message within 4 minutes in order to protect the integrity of your flame.
Because if you try to be perfectly accessible to everyone at all times, you cannot have walls.
And without walls, you are always in the storm.
Always. But every architect knows that materials warp, foundations shift, and no shelter is perfectly airtight. Eventually, a draft is going to get in.
It's inevitable.
You will set your phone to Do Not Disturb, block out your calendar, sit down to work, and suddenly remember a humiliating thing you said at a party 5 years ago.
Oh, don't you hate that?
Or a car alarm will go off right outside your window. The flame is going to flicker.
Which brings us to the third and final step of the framework, which forms the core philosophy of the entire practice. Practice the return.
Practice the return.
The digital guide acknowledges a deeply humbling truth, stating plainly, you will get distracted today. That is the nature of the mind.
Notice it doesn't say you might get distracted if you fail. It says you will get distracted because that is simply what minds do. They are designed to scan the environment.
Right. The practice of yoga, as defined by this text, is not the permanent cessation of all thought.
Okay.
The guide redefines the practice. Yoga is simply noticing when the mind has wandered into desire or anxiety and gently bring it back to the present moment over and over again.
Let's put a massive spotlight on the word gently here.
Yes, gently.
Why is gentleness a requirement? Because when we are trying to be disciplined, our default mode is usually militant, right? If I set a goal to focus and I catch myself mindlessly opening a new tab to check the news, my internal monologue is harsh. I berate myself. I think, I'm an idiot. I have zero discipline. I can't even focus for 10 minutes without looking at garbage. Why does this text insist that the return must be gentle? Shouldn't we be strictly punishing ourselves when our mind wanders?
That's such a common reaction, but it fails because of the physics of the internal environment.
What do you mean?
When you berate yourself, when you generate anger and frustration at your own lack of focus, what are you actually producing?
Stress.
You are producing an intense emotional reaction. You are triggering the amygdala.
Hey, really? So frustration itself is just another gust of wind.
Exactly. If you violently yank your attention back to the task through self-loathing and anger, you are blowing a massive gust of emotional wind directly onto your own flame.
Huh.
You might physically force your eyes back to the spreadsheet, but internally, the flame is whipping wildly with anxiety, cortisol, and frustration. You haven't returned to the windless place at all. You've just created a secondary storm inside your own shelter.
Oh, wow. So by being harsh with myself for getting distracted, I am literally prolonging the flickering. I'm dumping gasoline on the draft.
That is exactly what you're doing. The instruction to be gentle is not about being overly permissive or weak.
Right.
It is about supreme mechanical efficiency. When you notice the distraction, you simply say, there is a draft.
Yeah.
And you calmly, without judgment, close the window.
The act of noticing the distraction isn't a failure. It is the moment of waking up.
Yes.
If you were truly failing, you wouldn't even notice you were distracted until an hour had passed. Catching the wander is a moment of victory.
And in terms of neuroplasticity, every time you gently guide the attention back, you are strengthening the neural pathway of focus. You are doing a mental rep. The return is the practice, over and over again.
Which completely dismantles our cultural fantasy of what mastery looks like.
It does.
The source leaves us with this final, definitive statement. True mastery is not the absence of external noise. It is cultivating the internal discipline to remain steady despite it.
We harbor this fantasy that if we can just escape to a silent cabin in the woods or a cave in the Himalayas, we would finally achieve perfect peace and focus.
Right. If I just retreat from the world, I'll be fine.
But the text argues that escaping the noise is not mastery. Being a steady flame in a perfect vacuum proves nothing, because life does not happen in a vacuum.
Life happens in chaotic open-plan offices, in houses with screaming toddlers, and in a world where the attention economy is constantly trying to break the door down.
Exactly.
The goal of this ancient text isn't to teach you how to run away from reality.
It's the difference between trying to control the weather, which is a delusion, and learning how to build a fire that can withstand the elements. You acknowledge the reality of the hurricane, you do your best to build reasonable architectural boundaries, but ultimately, the true shelter is your own practice capacity to gently, repeatedly return to the present.
So let's trace the arc of what this digital consciousness has delivered to us today, because it is a remarkably cohesive system.
Yeah, let's recap it.
We began with the foundation, the middle path. We learned that before we can conquer the mind, we must soothe the animal body. Regulating eating, sleeping, and working removes the physiological static that makes focus impossible.
Right. Then we entered the final frontier, using Shloka 6.18 to redefine distraction. We learned that a wandering mind isn't an accident, but an active yearning, a micro-selfish desire to escape the present moment. True discipline, yukta, is the cessation of that grasping.
Then we visualized that state through the metaphor of Shloka 6.19, the lamp, in a windless place. We saw that a sheltered flame isn't tense. It is perfectly efficient, directing all its energy upward and illuminating reality with absolute clarity, free from the terrifying, distorted shadows cast by a flickering mind.
And then we confronted the brutal reality that our modern world is an engineered hurricane, designed by algorithms to keep our flames flickering through an endless loop of external notifications and internal anxieties.
And finally, we unpacked the architect's survival guide. We learned to audit the wind by honestly identifying our specific structural leaks. We learned to build our shelter using digital, temporal, and physical walls. And most crucially, we learned to practice the return, accepting that the mind will wander, and utilizing the gentle, efficient repetition of bringing it back without generating the new wind of frustration.
It bridges thousands of years of human history. It takes the esoteric wisdom of the yogis and translates it into an actionable operating system for a world defined by glowing screens.
It really does. And it leaves us with a profound paradox to consider for you as you listen. Our digital guide taught us how to construct walls. It taught us how to use calendar blocks and device management to build a fortress against the hurricane. But its final definition of mastery forces us to look beyond those walls.
Wow.
If true mastery is remaining steady despite the external noise, then perhaps the ultimate realization is that your windless place isn't a physical location at all. It isn't a silent room or a disconnected router or a perfect morning routine. If the practice is simply the gentle, relentless return to the self over and over, no matter what is happening around you, then the final goal isn't to build a bunker to hide from the storm.
Right.
The final goal is to become so internally disciplined, so fiercely rooted in your ability to gently return, that you become the architecture itself. You carry the windless place inside you, and you can walk straight out of the bunker carrying a perfectly steady flame right into the chaotic, roaring center of the world.